What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian from Theo and Harris, and welcome to ASKTNH. Today's episode, well, first we'll do a wristwatch check, and then I'll get to the episode. So right now I'm wearing an amazing Omega Geneve. I'll show you guys a photo, not a photo, quick wristwatch check real quick. It's absolutely gorgeous. It has these pink gold dolphin hands and matching indices. I'm totally, I don't know, I'm just enamored by the design here. It has this two-tone kind of dial, catches in the sun. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's available in the shop at theoandharris.com, and I'm going to wear it until then, until it sells. So I'm enjoying the hell out of it. So today's episode is an interview with the Watchface, which is a watch blog, an online publication. One of the writers, Daniel, contacted me with an interview, and they wanted to do it in type, but I figured that a video making a whole ASKTNH about it would be a lot better. So if you're watching this on the Watchface, then hi, I'm Christian, and if you're watching this through YouTube, then please go check out the Watchface after this, because they are a cool publication. So let's get into the questions. I don't know how many other vintage watch guys there are on YouTube. There are a lot of watch people on YouTube, much bigger than I am, but I think that many of them don't talk about vintage all that much. But anyway, well, my passion started the channel, and the passion for the medium not only started it, but it kind of made it a little bit more, made it larger, and it made it more engaging and more interesting for people to follow. But what started my passion, probably just a fundamental interest in mechanics and design, even probably more so design, texture, things like that. I probably would be, suited to be in style or fashion as well, but I'm just not drawn to it in a practical sense as I am to watches. The actual idea of holding these things and seeing them and being able to play with them and inspect them, and they are so old, and there's that charm about that I'm sure exists in vintage coats and hats and whatever. That's just not my thing. So I think that that's how the practicality of executing my interests. That's how it started. I started Theo and Harris 2 years ago. Basically 2 years ago, like this week-ish, next week, something like that. I really started it up in February, but I had the idea and I really decided to execute on it in November of 2014 or something. I was just, hanging out, and I was interested in watches for quite a while, but I just never did it. I was just interested as a kind of a lay person. I was in high school. I was in college. I was in college, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't really know what I was doing in college. So I don't know. It was kind of just a thing to just do. It was kind of the way to keep busy and not get a real job. That's really how it started. I didn't have a job at the time. I wasn't working, and I just decided to run with it. So that's how I started Theo and Harris. It's evolved so many times since. It started off strictly as an online shop, and then we got involved in blogging very heavily, and the shop was on the back burner. But now I think we figured out a way to integrate both the shop and the vlog so well that they wouldn't be the same without each other. So that's how the whole thing started. There are no Theo. There is no Theo, nor is there a Harris. It's fake names, just fictitious fun. It sounds really cool though. Interesting. I think that vintage Omegas as a whole represent tremendous value, particularly dress watches in the 36, 37 millimeter range. And that's because they are not only classic and well built. All Omega is classic and well built. Basically everything they did, apart from the 70s kind of weird stuff, is very just classical and ever relevant, forever relevant. So that's why I think that Omega as a whole is a very good, value prop. But those 36, 37 millimeter watches, they represent even more value, although they are a little bit more expensive. But they represent so much value because of their size, because they are this really happy medium between the old world class of vintage design and kind of a new world sizing. So then it's oversized, now it's proportionate. I also love 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 millimeter watches. I love small watches, but there is no denying the relevance of the 36, 37 millimeter watches. I think that they are overlooked a little bit, but not too much. I think, it's hard to say. I mean, there are people who are really below Accutron geeks with tuning forks, and then Omega F30, geeks, and F300, whatever. And they're all different kinds of geeks that appreciate different kinds of watches. To me, the most underappreciated watches are those two in a serious quartz sense, right? And if you're taking the whole mechanical quartz, well, the mechanics of quartz seriously, those two watches are very undervalued, the Accutrons and the Omegas. But if you take a step back and look at just design, I think that there are some amazing design from the likes of Timex and Casio, particularly Timex actually, in their vintage dress watches. I always say this, not everyone wants a vintage dress watch. Actually, a lot of people don't want vintage dress watches. So to fulfill that that kind of checkbox or that tick box or whatever of that dress design classism. Wear it with a suit, wear it like fine with a sweater, with a crocodile strap or leather strap. I think that vintage Timexes, sometimes with moon phases and Roman dials and things like that, which can be found for relatively low amounts of money, are great value props. They're not great watches by any means, but I think that in design they achieve a lot for a low dollar because they are quartz. That is extremely hard to say. I sold my Jaeger a couple weeks ago. I had a Jaeger LeCoultre military watch. Totally, beautiful, beautiful watch. I sold a Zodiac Seawolf a while back, probably a year ago, a year plus. That was probably the best Zodiac Seawolf out there, at least that I've seen. That was an amazing watch. I sold a chocolate dial Seamaster. It's just unbelievable. I actually wore and owned it for months before I sold it. That watch was just totally incredible. And I gotta say, I have to mention, the Rolex Datejust. To reference 1601s, 1603s, 16014s, 1603s, those watches. Almost every single one has taken my breath away. I love how classic they are. I wear one. I change watches about twice a day or 3 times a day, so I'm probably wearing about 14 watches a week, and I wear Datejust at least 4 or 5 times throughout that, maybe even more. So those watches to me are some of my favorite as a whole genre. Great question. Start with reading. Start with reading and researching and watching our videos and other people's videos. That's how you start. You don't start by buying. You start by consuming and understanding what you like. Then you take a dive into buying and buy small to begin with and build a relationship with a dealer. I think that's the most important thing. Building a relationship with a dealer. If you do that and if you show goodwill and you show honesty and interest and you're kind, a dealer like myself is going to help you. They're going to help and sometimes they're just helping you for their money, which good for those people. But like, for example, I've helped people come into their collections and come into their style and what they're interested in. And that's a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. Am I going to answer, 3 paragraphs, emails twice a week forever? No, I'm going to tell you like, hey, like eventually I can't. I just can't do it. But I'm always more than happy to help people through these things. You'll never know what you're interested in until you start doing it with watches. Some people think that they're movement geeks, and then it turns out they're just not. To go back to the Datejust remark before, I love texture in Datejust. I love texture in vintage watches. That sometimes with better watches, it's flat and it has no texture. It has no depth. And that to me, that's really what interests me. Sometimes bizarre, esoteric, style-driven. I'm very style and design-driven. My Cartier Santos it's a style-driven watch. The mechanical movement inside is nothing to remark of, but I think that I understand myself very well by consuming and understanding. I can't describe how I understand by understanding. I understand by consuming and trying things and being self-aware enough to know when I was wrong about something. That's how you come. And like I said, just talk to people and read on Instagram or consume on Instagram. That's how you start to learn, not by buying everything in sight, not by killing yourself financially to kind of keep up with the Joneses. It doesn't work. You'll never learn much more about watches. Great question. Vintage Longines is incredibly undervalued, but then it has a big jump and then it's overvalued. It really depends. As a genre, not as a brand, as a genre, I think that vintage dress watches are incredibly undervalued. If you dress them down with a suede strap, they all of a sudden become casual. If you dress them up with a crocodile strap, now they're the perfect dress watch. And a lot of the time, because they are so isolating in design, like this watch, this watch under $1,000, you have an Omega that is just like totally incredible. That to me is where the value is hidden. Yes, I think that Rolex Datejusts are incredibly valuable. I think that if they went up in price by 20%, they would still be valuable. I think that vintage Tudor, in a lot of ways, not always, represents some tremendous value. I think that the dates and the oyster, the oyster prince dates or whatever, they represent some, just really great buys. They're way less than Rolex in price, typically, in percentage, at least a couple $100. Their build is great. Their movements are, although, not the Rolex movements, really unmistakable to a lay person. They serve the same function. They serve it well. You can't really beat those watches. Do I go Snowflake for value prop? No, but I definitely go the regular Submariners, the 36 or 37 millimeter Submariners. We had one on the shop not too long ago. It's a great watch. Found it a great new home. Those are the watches that I think that really represent some tremendous buys for vintage consumers. Right? Vintage manually wound chronographs, if you can get them, under $1,300 in most cases. Those are, be out of this world. And we have one for sale, I think right now, a copper dial one totally ridiculous stuff. Sometimes just, as long as condition is good and servicing is good, that to me, that's paramount more than anything else. It's condition, it's servicing, and then we start playing value prop. Because as soon as you don't have good condition and as soon as you have a no service record or no service guarantee, then all of a sudden anything that was value is no longer value because you could be in for double the price in a couple months. So screw that. But as a whole, those are the watches that represent right now to consumers in this market landscape great value. I get the same inspiration everyone else in this industry gets. I mean, my thoughts are different. I think that my thoughts are, no, I won't even go that far. As far as I was going to go. I think that a lot of people in the industry agree with me and could make very, very, very similar videos that I make. Sure, they're going to disagree on certain ways and have more information on certain things, and that's fine. But I think that TNH, we as a company and me as a person who gives my opinions, 5 times a week through these videos. I just don't hold anything back. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I'm wrong sometimes, and my word shouldn't be taken as gospel. There are people out there with very, very similar thoughts that I have and that I share. I just share them, and for a lot of reasons, they're not allowed to, or they think, there's a couple things. They don't have the medium to. They never cared to build the medium to. They don't understand social media enough. They don't understand YouTube enough. They don't understand the value of communicating with you guys in these mediums. But even more so than that, they can't talk about Tudor because they get ad bucks from Tudor, or they can't yell at Rolex because their best friends are Rolex AD and they pay them money to talk about so it's just like everyone's so intertwined and so incestual. I mean, I'm surprised the watch industry doesn't have a third-eyed child, but we at TNH, we have none of that. That's it. We really don't. We're very on the fringe in a lot of ways. It's just us, our watches, our watchmaker who's a good friend, a couple of good industry friends, and that's it. I mean, if you're a New York, watch geek, hashtag, watch fam, person that's very active, I don't hang out. Like, I don't hobnob, with all these brands because nothing apart from, ultimately nothing good comes of it for someone like me. For a regular consumer, great thing because it's beautiful. You can play with these watches, but down the line, you're going to just, if you're in my position, you're going to just end up trying to be presenting yourself as a legitimate source, a legitimate unbiased source, and you're full because you're in the pocket of somebody or you're in the best interest of somebody else. You don't step on toes. We don't deal with that. So I'd rather associate and have my friend group, outside of the watch fam and with consumers. It's outside of the industry and with consumers. That's what it is. So that's where we get the inspiration from. And it's everywhere. We just communicate it. That's the difference between TNH and everybody else. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of mistakes that they make. I don't know what the worst one is. I think that Rolex, Rolex does okay on Instagram and on social media. So does Tudor. But as a whole, they just totally neglecting social media. They're neglecting narrative. And you know what? Like, it's not like, oh, you're neglecting this little thing called social media. It's ridiculous. I mean, you're neglecting the only thing people are consuming right now. So that's, I mean, or 90% or 95% of people are consuming. So that's not, it's not this little like, oh, qualm, like, oh, Christian cries about social media again. It's the truth. You have Omega, Rolex, 100 brands, 1,000 brands that couldn't give less shit about social media. So yeah, no wonder why no one's buying your watches. No wonder why social industry is tanking. So I mean, there's that. Then there's, in watches and with every other medium, people or companies that don't put the consumer at the epicenter. That's a huge problem. They're not reverse engineering what the consumer wants. They're building this thing that ultimately they're not selling well enough. I think Steve Jobs had a great quote about you tell the consumer what they want, and yes, you can if you are Steve Jobs and you are that brilliant. But for a lot of people, that doesn't work. They don't have the power or the leverage or the influence to tell the consumer what they want. Because they don't have any narrative abilities. They're not speaking through social media. So it doesn't work that way. You can't have it both ways. I'm going to tell them what they want. I'm not going to tell them though because I don't like the mediums. It doesn't work that way. So I think that's a big mistake. There are a couple others, but the whole I talked about this on Rant TNH last week, and the fact that watch industry and watch companies totally neglect the idea of playing on emotion, playing on this idea of sentimentality in the experience of owning a watch. Big mistake, really an enormous mistake. So those are the cardinal sins I think the watch industry is actively committed. The best change, once again, there are a lot of, I can rattle off a couple ones. I think that technology is getting better, and that's very important for consumers. I think that reliability is huge, and when technology gets better, reliability gets better. I think that the creation, the idea that Tudor is back is a great change in the watch industry. I don't love everything Tudor does, and a lot of what they do is wrong, but Fundamentally, they're Pelagos, they're Black Bay. Some of their watches, like those two in particular, are very, very good watches that I think have a lot of potential to change a lot of the watch industry. They're converting customers away from the Submariner, and they're converting them up from like SKX. So they're the Seikos. That's an amazing kind of dynamic they're doing, and I think that they're achieving it well. They're achieving all the Rolex heritage. I mean, they're like they're like the Rolex pseudonym. Like if Rolex happened to be a transvestite, they would speak through Tudor. Like and that's a weird thing, but it's the truth. I mean, Rolex can't do bevels anymore, so they make Tudor do them. Rolex can't make a watch in bronze because that would make a lot of sense for tool-y things or natural things, so they make it through Tudor. Rolex can't reissue the original Submariners. They make it through Tudor. So I think that's a very interesting thing. I actually like the watch industry has done that. And I think that it'd be interesting to see more companies own subsidiary companies that aren't just totally irrelevant, which is what happens most of the time. It's a large conglomerate that owns 1,000 companies. It'd be interesting to see more companies like Rolex, let's say Rolex, Blancpain, Omega, whomever, own subsidiary companies that offer watches at lower prices, but get consumers in. That's amazing. It's in my opinion, that's what Swatch is going to do, and I'm very interested to see that in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching my question and answer with the Watchface. If you guys are on YouTube right now, check them out on their website, and put the link right here or below. Put the link below to this article. And if you guys are watching this on the Watchface and you haven't seen me before, hi, I'm Christian. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email at info@theoandharris.com, and that's it. Have a great day, guys.